Hi, I'm Melissa VALDEZ, Director of Client Experience at SBI. On today's show is Mark Lister, the Chief Digital Officer for Ness. Mark is a transformational leader helping to bridge corporate, marketing, and sales strategies to the digital engagement of prospects and customers. Hope you enjoyed today's show. From SBI's Executive Briefing Center in Dallas, Texas, the most watched and listened to content in B2B sales and marketing, it's the SBI Podcast with your host, Matt Shares.
Welcome to the SBI Podcast, a weekly show dedicated to helping you make your number. Today, we're going to demonstrate how to make the digital experience a competitive differentiator. So why this topic of digital experience? I mean, if there was a trend happening right now in B2B sales and marketing, it is digitization. And how do you become a digital company? Prospect and customer expectations have risen, and failure to provide them with an exceptional digital experience for every single one, it's going to result in poor revenue growth. So some customers prioritize their digital experience over product performance when they make a purchase decision. So this requires a deep understanding of the customer's digital journey and every single touch point along the way. So mapping this customer digital journey is difficult, but it's mission critical. And when it's done correctly, it's going to result in exceptional revenue growth. This is a trend you need to get on. My name is Matt Shares. I'm the CEO of SBI. I'm also your host. Joining me in the studio is my beloved co-host, Melissa VALDEZ, and she is here to point you to resources to advance you along the way to making your number.
Thank you, Matt. Welcome to our listeners.
And I'm really excited about our guest for a couple of reasons. Joining us is Mark Lister. He is the Chief Digital Officer for Ness. He also has striking resemblance to Hugh Grant, not only because of his accent, but also the very cool sweater that he's wearing. So Mark, welcome to the show, and please introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, thank you very much, Matt. Mark Lister, Chief Digital Officer at Ness. Ness is a company, whether you've heard of us or not, we do some amazing work for amazing customers in different verticals, be they retail, automotive, music, all kinds of sectors across North America and Europe. And we're the partner with companies building a digital platform. That might be a front-end experience, it might be a mobile application, omni-channel strategy. And we have expertise in design, development, and data, bringing those three experts together in a team to get their benefit, their revenue-generating platform to market quickly and get it improved and improving over time so that they're never bogged down with one technology, because we're agnostic of technology. We just want to keep making it better.
Very good. So for those listening, as you think about your digital journey, Mark and his team at Ness would be somebody to think about relative to digitizing the front end of your experience, the back end of your experience, and the end-to-end platform. So really happy to have Mark on the show. Melissa, the audience is going to want to follow along with Mark and I as we go on our journey. Can you share with them how they might do that?
Yes, if you are listening, hopefully you have your How to Make Your Number in 2018 workbook handy. If you don't have this workbook, you better pause right now and run out and get it. To find it, you'll go to sbi.tips/2018 workbook, and you will follow along in customer experience design on page 124.
All right, so Mark and I are going to jump into it. So Mark, every major company right now is going through some level of a digital transformation. So I think about your role and the seat that you get. You're not only leading a transformation at Ness as a practitioner, you're also helping companies take this journey together. So you've got this amazing perspective. If you were to help our audience understand a couple of the key compelling events that are driving businesses to invest in digital transformation, what sorts of patterns are you seeing that are emerging from your discussions?
Well, first worth saying that we use that phrase digital transformation probably too much, and I'm trying to put it away now, because if you're not doing it, well, then where are you? So everyone has got somewhere. There's no denying that. There's no one that's never heard of it. But some people have put out, a mobile app. It's kind of okay, but it doesnn't do much. They might have built a data lake, but they're not really getting any insights out of the data, and it's going to take 3 years. People going so slowly, right? To me, the promise of digital is instant connection with your audience, instant connection with your data, and tools and practices to get stuff done quickly, get to market fast, stay ahead of people. And absorb it, get the research, get what people are saying about you, and have fun doing it, but do it quick. And people's transformations, I think, a lot of them that are not doing it successfully are just bringing an old world view into a different technology set rather than what it is, which is a true cultural shift.
So I love,
to connect with you.
the old world view into technology is the wrong way to do it. As you talk about, there's an element of speed, right? There's an element of readiness and access to data. So then for those that are listening, how would you define the digital experience, and maybe where does it start and where does it stop?
Well, I suggest it probably shouldn't stop because it's iterative. It just keeps getting better and more efficient and improved, because there'll always be a challenger coming from someone somewhere. Everyone, I mean, it's a classic, right? It's Sunday night at home with your kids and your Netflix and a great digital experience. You come to work and you're asked to log in and do some training on a new package. My goodness, who wants to do some training on a new package, right? We want stuff to be instantly, intuitively a tool that helps you get your job done and makes you better at your job. And if any of your software that's being used by customers or employees or anyone you interact with is not doing that, then it can be better. So, and don't stop until it keeps getting better, because the expectation's there. The key thing I'd say was, customer expectations is one thing, but crucially from a culture point of view, being customer centric, taking their view, having some empathy with them, being outside in, as they say, instead of being inside out and we'll make something and they'll love it. No, they won't. They're going to be apathetic mostly. You've got to make them love it by being smart and learning from the best and just taking some of the tools and bringing them in-house.
So, Mark, on that point, when people are thinking about this move to digital and specifically talking about customer touch points, I mean, you just gave a great example about Netflix, sitting at home, hanging with your kids on a Sunday, wanting to have real access to watch a movie your way on your device. And Netflix knows, relative to the touch points, that those are important. So they built that into their customer experience design. How should folks think about that concept of the experience and touch point analysis as they think about digital?
Yeah, I've got this view that some, competitors of ours, maybe consultants or agencies, a lot of these companies surprise you that they're quite scared of data, right? People think it's a bit nerdy. It ends up straight with a technologist. Can you find something magic in the data? I like to think of it, data's just a record of a conversation with some people, whether it's a click stream or a social media feed. At your leisure, you get to see not just what one person did, but what millions of people did. Sure. And you get to find what they were really saying. They were really saying they didn't like that. That was boring. They all left at this point. They didn't put it in their basket because it was too expensive. These are hundreds of people talking to you about how to make your business better. So if you change your mindset and start listening to what be a data whisperer. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Listen to what it's telling you and enjoy it. Yep. It's pointing the way forward.
So are there, Mark, before we go to our first break, are there any early results of these efforts for companies that have invested in digital transformation that you've seen from your vantage point that you would share with the audience as they get ready to go on their journey, or they're in the midst of taking their journey?
The broad answer there is companies that are kind of reinventing themselves, right? And I just saw some really good results from Walmart hit this morning, right? But companies, they're a grocery company, and yet, but Jeff Bezos says they're pretty much his biggest threat. That they have, they've got scale and they've got oceans of data that they can mobilize. And if they start getting into loyalty and understanding and serving customers offers that personalize, I love this phrase, extreme personalization. And if you're a company of that scale that can offer extreme personalization to one customer, you're doing something right. And there's quite managing it and reinventing themselves along the way.
Yeah. I love that term, extreme personalization. So for those listening, running B2B organizations, as we head to a break, think about extreme personalization from your consumer behavior and how Amazon makes you feel, or how Netflix makes you feel, or any other B2C provider that you work with. The B2B experience being frictionless, as Mark mentioned, the journey never ends. It's a continuous loop, but also that it's extremely personalized and contextualized. And ask yourself, am I doing that? Because it's not a matter of if you need to, it's a matter of how fast you can get there. So we're going to take a quick break from the interview. And my non-digital co-host, who is right here in front of me, Melissa, is going to share a digital tool that you can leverage. So Melissa, over to you.
So many pearls today from Mark. I can't wait to hear the rest of the upcoming segments. For those of you, Happy New Year. It's Q1. I'm sure you received your number for the year, your revenue target, and you're wondering, how am I going to make this number? Well, not to fear. SBI has developed a interactive web-based self-assessment made specifically for you. You'll go to sbi.tips/revenue growth diagnostic. And what you'll do is you'll spend about 10 minutes to fill out the questionnaire, and you get an output, a roadmap, so to speak, of how you can increase the probability of making your number. So again, it's sbi.tips/revenue growth diagnostic. You can also put that in Google and it'll pop right up.
Bingo. Digital experience all the way. So welcome back, everybody. You're listening to the SBI podcast. I'm your host, Matt Shares, and my guest today is Mark Lister. And Mark is the Chief Digital Officer for Ness. And Mark and I are demonstrating how to make the digital experience a competitive differentiator. In the first segment, we talked about this whole concept of why digital, why now, starting to map the customer journey and touch point analysis. So now we're going to get back into the questions. We'll talk about data. So Mark, big data, as you know, is at the heart of digital transformation. From your vantage point, how are companies winning with data, or do you see them struggling with data?
There's 2 points of view that. There are some winners, some strugglers. How best to describe that? So when I was talking about that old world view, I'm pretty clear that it's the technology-only approach to data that's going to make you struggle, right? Data is not the job of a technologist to sort out. It's the job of a team. Yeah. Different perspectives on what to do with the data. And back to my original point, it's a designer, developer of data. I heard it put very well by Scott Cook at Intuit, who calls it a dreamer, a hustler, and a hacker. They're a team with different perspectives. What are we going to do with this stuff? We're going to find something. There's a needle in a haystack element. You've got to be rigorous about doing it, because therein lies the magic and the future. And companies that see data as a kind of a commodity to be lugged around as a burden, needs threshing around. No, then that's not the right way to look at it. If you need to make an investment in data, you need to show some return on it. Don't do it all. Yeah. Do the stuff that you think's most valuable, right? Yep. These phrases of lakes and warehouses, they sound daunting, don't they? Yes. Warehouse sounds massive. I like a little shed to maybe start with, or maybe a stream. Find a stream of data and do something with it. But we prioritize everything in what we do every day. Take something you think has something in it. You've got some intuition that's going to be the place to look, the big bang for your buck, whichever way you want to say it, and start small and play with it and prove to yourself as well as your customers that you can find insights and do it. The idea of saying, right, we're going to take all the data this company's ever created in history. We're going to spend 5 years kind of polishing it up and cleaning it. Oh, it's going to take forever and you'll get nowhere and everyone will leave, right? Yeah. You've got to be more bold than that and take it in bite-sized chunks.
So, Mark, I think one of the things we see because a lot of folks listening to our show right now, sales leaders, marketing leaders, CEOs, heads of product, and they're asking themselves, as I think about all the data I have in my organization, how do I organize it? A simple framework that we've seen work well is the concept of being able to separate your descriptive and diagnostic analytics. Simply put, descriptive telling me what happened, diagnostic telling me why it happened, before I try to move into the more forward-looking, which is predictive, right? What's going to happen, and then prescriptive, how do I actually have the ability to change the future based on what I know? So for those thinking about how do I get started, think about that very simple rubric, if you will, of descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive analytics, which then leads me to my next question, Mark. What are you seeing relative to artificial intelligence? And should companies be moving towards offering AI relative to their digital transformation? Is this something that is not applicable for everybody? Can you share a point of view on that? Because it's one of those terms right now that I think has a lot of people wrestling. What does this mean to me?
Right. Well, it's great that you asked the question straight after big data, because no big data, no AI. You've got to have structured. There's 3 things you need to have AI. You need structured data, you need a business use case, and you need a team of talented people to go about it. You can't do it without those 3 things. Yep. Interestingly, I was doing a talk last week in New York where I said that in financial services, the push towards creating audit trails that protect everyone from economic Armageddon, like 2008, has mandated a change to digitize everything. And by digitizing everything, you're actually structuring your data, which is a prerequisite for AI. So in many ways, they're encouraging innovation in financial services, which turned out to be a good thing. Yeah. So I look at it as as a path. I loved your description there of analytics, which I think you said in a sales and marketing context. But I know that phrasing in the rubric, as you call it, from work we do with manufacturers. So even people looking at turbines and oil rigs, they look at it in the same way. And you need to go through that journey before you can peer into the future. You can't run before you can walk, of course. Okay, so AI just seems to me a logical extension of where we're at, right? You've got organized data, you've got tools that can mine it. Of course you're going to do it. I like to think of it like this. This is progress. This is happening. I know there's all kinds of societal rules around it, and we've got reason to be worried about certain elements, but it's happening. It's going to happen. If it's not you, it's going to be someone else, right? Yeah. If this progress is operational efficiency for a start, squeezing out costs that consumers are paying, it's going to happen, right? So you might as well be on that board as anywhere else. I'm actually talking a little bit at the moment to companies involved in like smart grids and smart homes. And you get, if you take that forward into the future, you get to the concept when you've really got down with renewables and solar and wind to the concept of almost free energy. Yeah. Imagine how much of our time, money we spend earning money to pay our utility bills. If you get to free energy because the sun's shining, the economics of the world change massively. And that's where this is pointing with IoT, big data and AI lined up. Yep. But artificial intelligence is a precursor, is progress. You've got to be on that train because it's pointing to reducing friction everywhere.
Yeah. I love that concept of reducing friction, the frictionless customer experience, right? As we think about and what digital has done for B2C experience and what it's now continuing to do for B2B. I know in much of my work that's focused on serving CEOs, the concept of customer experience or client experience design is the overarching framework. And underneath that sits things like selling a new opportunity, delivering on that first opportunity, whether it's a product or a service, and then what is the experience and the success around that? So you sort of think about those three segments that sit underneath that.
Can I just say something on that? The way you described it was great. Frictionless leads you towards, I'm engaged with this customer, this brand, this company. It's frictionless, so I'm skating, right? I'm not slowing down. I'm never going to leave. I'm happy. I don't even want to think about this relationship. I've got much more important things in my life to worry about. The reason you break up with people is because of friction. The reason people won't be receptive to you trying to sell them more is because of friction. If I'm flying down the road on my ice skates and there's no friction, I'm going to stay.
I think the best part about your example, not only is it a perfect metaphor, you found a way to weave in skating as a former hockey player that guarantees you unlimited access now to the SBI community. Next thing I know, you're going to start talking about how you love bald people, and that's the way to go. So, man, we are off to one heck of a good start.
Well, when we cut some B-roll to this interview, you can put some footage of you in the old days in it, right?
Very nice. So my last question in this segment, Mark, you've stated that Ness focuses on revenue-generating platforms. So tell the audience a little bit more about how they should think about monetizing a digital experience.
Once again, even that phrase, revenue-generating platform, sounds somewhat arcane because I'm thinking, well, how else do you engage now but digitally and through a channel, right? Yeah. And as you said, whether it's Netflix or Priceline or JP Morgan Chase, I myself can't imagine like walking into a branch and signing some paper to do a non-digital platform to start a relationship. We came up with that phrase a little bit at the time, whenever, a few years back, to distinguish ourselves from the companies who are, logging timesheets or holidays or bonus pay. We don't do that. There are big organizations that manage that very well. When we say revenue generating platforms, we're getting into that element you were talking about with analytics, right? Our platform is the current present engagement with someone. If you extremely personalize it, you can point to them being engaged with you in the future, maintaining that frictionless relationship. And from there, the back and forth of buy and sell in a relationship with no friction is a much more beautiful thing than like buying and selling, right? It's a relevant contextual thing that not only do I want, but I kind of need. So I trust you guys because you've been good to me for a year or two with this frictionless thing we've got going. It just becomes a much more equitable deal that you have between you, right?
Yeah.
When there's trust in there.
Yeah, that's a great example. And I think the concept around trust and the way you talked about if you are skating and you don't want, because you're having a frictionless experience, you don't think about it wanting to end, which is that continuous loop, as opposed to I start as a customer and I end because now I'm done being a customer. And that's a very old world mentality to think about that experience. So Melissa's going to share a little more information with you, the audience. So Melissa, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, if you in the audience could benefit from any of Mark's emerging best practices in regards to the digital customer experience, you don't have to go at it alone. Our SBI team of experts is here to help. The How to Make Your Number 2018 workbook is the official workbook of the studio. I would like to personally invite you all to come down here to Dallas, Texas, enjoy some Southern hospitality, and engage in an interactive workshop to help you answer your questions and form a strategy around this topic. Again, to get the workbook, you'll go to sbi.tips/2018 workbook.
Welcome back, everybody. This is our last segment with Mark. We're demonstrating how to make the digital experience a competitive differentiator. And the way we're doing that is in the lens of customer experience design. So we're going to jump back into the questions. So Mark, the role of the Chief Digital Officer, or the CDO, has been established in recent years. And these people are spearheading digital experiences in companies, as you are at Ness. What's your view of the role in terms of how it's been established in companies, who this person reports to, what the funding looks like? Talk a little bit about that for the audience.
Chief Digital Officer is a transient role. It shouldn't be one in 4 or 5 years' time. I'll have to find a new job, I guess. But for the moment, I'll take this one because it's fun. There's two ways to go with it, right? You can be an ambassador, evangelist, strategist to hype it up, to make it sound important, which is an important part of this. Or the second role is to be a real fundamental agent of change and woven into the fabric of where the company's going in everything they do. And that's not just customer facing, that's all the way through recruiting people, getting young people out of university excited enough to want to join, the way you communicate, the language, the channels, just got to feel up to speed with the world. Right. So, different companies around the world, like I say, have got different ones. I think I've played a bit of both. But it's so back to that reporting structure and the funding. The evangelist role often doesn't come with that much funding and maybe a team of one, which is the person to do it. The one where the CEO's made a much bigger commitment to actually really changing the company over the medium and longer term, the CDO might well get some funding and a team and a responsibility and plugged into every facet of the company, right? Sales, marketing, operations, delivery. It's got to change everywhere because it only is credible and have integrity if it does, because it can't just stick in one silo.
Right. So, Mark, if you were speaking to a CEO and giving him or her advice on reporting structure, should the CDO be a direct report of the CEO, or should they report into one of the other functional leaders?
Direct report. I mean, that's the answer. This is in companies where they do need to make a digital leap. That's really a key thing, right? Yep. If they've already made the leap and they're doing well, then of course that's not required, right? So you've got your Silicon Valley leaders and you've got your price lines and people like this. They don't need a chief digital officer because that's them now. They are that, right? So that role will have a different name and respond to the chief of sales and the chief of product. I understand that entirely. But if you're really struggling and need to get digital quick, or, let's face it, you might be facing some really cataclysmic challenges, then the CDO's got to be plugged directly into the CEO and they've got to talk a little bit with the same voice. Yeah.
Okay, so then we're going to have a little fun. We're going to have a little speed round where you're going to give some quick bits of advice to a couple of different functional leaders. So if you think about sales and marketing, who are the kissing cousins of revenue growth, and many would argue that marketing leaders are more aware of the importance of digital than sales. So if you were speaking to just the sales leaders within a company undergoing a digital initiative, what advice would you give to them as they think about digital?
I mean, I'm going to use my own experience because it's the only way to do it, isn't it? But to be digital, to be customer-centric, is to have empathy with who you're talking to. Don't be spinning me some story you practice over your sales, your charm over the last 20 years. You've got to put yourself in their context. It's extreme personalization, once again. Do your homework, do some reading, learn who you're talking to, because there's lots of ways on the internet to do it, surprisingly enough. And make sure you're shaping your sales story, don't want to call it pitch, to the person you're talking to make them care, because they won't otherwise. They don't want to hear generic, bland, one-way communication. Digital's two-way, right? It's social, it's a dialogue. And you just pushing your story is not going to get you anywhere. So empathy for the sales leader.
I love that If I'm a sales leader right now, I'm driving in my car or I'm listening to this podcast on the subway, commuting, and I'm busy and I'm thinking about my forecast. Stop. What you should be saying to yourself is, how do I ensure I don't get outpaced? And the way to ensure you don't get outpaced as a sales leader is you understand the touch points, digital and physical touch points of how each of your buyers buy. That is mission critical. Can't get it done without that. You might be able to make the Q1 number, the Q2 number without it, but this is a wave that is coming and it's picking up speed. So I think that's great advice for Mark. So Mark, let's have same context question relative to advice. Now let's give it to the CMO. What advice do you have for them?
I think I touched on it earlier. Remember apathy. Apathy is the prevailing concept out there, right? There's whatever you've got, there's thousands more like it. So if everyone's going to shrug and go, similar, how do you make people care? How do you make people care? Assume they won't care. People that assume they will are bagging a loser there, right? You've got to kind of stand out a little bit. And I believe, once again, that's in the extreme personalization of how to make it relevant. And this is where marketing tools of segmentation and understanding audiences and speaking to people, you should be able to cut your story many different ways so it plays with an audience. Because once again, generic and bland won't work. You need to be speaking to someone kind of in their language on their channel.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. The last one I was going to ask you about was product. Let me be provocative and let you react to my view. And as I think about CEOs and product leaders that we work with, and this whole concept of launching a new product. And what we find is the product team spends a lot of time doing the traditional research, talking to customers, understanding user groups, getting proof of concept, all of that stuff. But relative to thinking about digitization, when they commercialize their innovation, now I'm going to go to the street and I've got to make money. How do I land a beachhead customer? How do I get the sales team enabled? How do we have the right messaging? We're not seeing digitization carry itself all the way through into the commercial part of the organization. So the product leader, I see, can be a real, beacon of change relative to pulling the organization along the digital journey. Agree or disagree?
Slight variation on your question. Hang on. Products. First of all, the way you describe putting a product together sound like it took ages. Oh, that didn't sound very digital. Unless you're like being truly innovative in creating something groundbreaking, like an autonomous driving vehicle, which fair enough, you want to drive a few 100 million miles so you don't kill anyone. Yep. That's important. Yep. But you've got to use iterative challenges to make sure you're mitigating the risk of failure by checking that people care. The one thing I have, sorry, I realize I'm not answering it very astutely, but one thing there is the chief product officer, I don't know too many of them are doing their research in other countries about products that exist already. A lot of them still believe their product is unique. I'm like, well, I've seen that product 50 times in South Korea already. How come you don't know about that? They're missing a trick a little bit about seeing things that are similar and then making them better. But there's not many unique products to be made that are completely, game changing that you can't imagine it. But there's a lot of iteration to do on ideas that are good and taking that. So to truly commercialize, I think you've got to have a really realistic, schematic view of your audience and your chance of success, but base that on similar patterns that have emerged elsewhere.
The importance of pattern recognition and casting a wide net is what Mark just articulated for everybody to understand. So, what a great interview. And Mark, I appreciate the time. I know Melissa's got one more thing that she's going to share with the audience. So Melissa, over to you.
Yes, for those of you listening, we've been talking about extreme personalization. Well, we want you to personalize your SBI experience as part of our community. If you are not already registered, please go to salesbenchmarkindex.com/register. I'm used to saying SBI tips, but it's salesbenchmarkindex.com/register, and you can personalize your experience with the topics of interest to you and when you would like to receive content.
All right. Thanks, Melissa. And Melissa, I think we have, in relative to folks that are listening, if there's any folks out there that feel they are packing with them emerging best practices and ideas like Mark, relative to a personal experience, how would they get in touch with you if they wanted to perhaps appear on the show?
Yes, absolutely. We are always looking for fantastic guests like Mark. We know a lot of people, but we don't know everyone. So if you have a great story to tell to the B2B sales and marketing community, get in touch with me. You can do so through our website, salesbenchmarkindex.com, or just look me up on LinkedIn.
All right. Thanks, Melissa. Well, Mark, can't thank you enough. Not only were we on the bleeding edge talking about digitization relative to the customer experience, your charm and wit was a lot of fun to spend time. So thanks for investing in us and your contribution to the community.
Well, it was a pleasure talking to you. I'm glad we tackled some ice skating somewhere along the line as well.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Man. Thanks a lot.
That was fun. All right, everybody. So that's it for today. If I leave you with one thought, it is this: relative to digitization, and as you think about how your customers are buying, the move of B2C into B2B, it always outpaces, right? Consumers are always outpacing how businesses buy. So this is not a wave that isn't going to hit you. It's going to be how fast, how hard, and how wet do you get from this wave that's coming. So we wish you good luck, and until next time, I hope you make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on the studio, SBI's Executive Briefing Center, our team, or to schedule a workshop, please visit salesbenchmarkindex.com.